Man, do you hear that? Do you hear that strength? This is an old cast iron Hargrave clamp, and I think it's the best woodworking bar clamp ever made. But I just made them a whole lot better with this really simple upgrade that has changed the whole way I use these things. So let's check out how we accomplished it. So today I'm going to start work on a project I've been wanting to do for a long time, and it centers around these big bar clamps. And what it is specifically is I want to make big pads for these jaws. These things are awesome. They apply an insane amount of pressure, but that can cause an issue, especially when you're working on softer wood. And I find a lot of times when I'm doing a glue up, I use like little pieces to put in there of wood I don't care about, but it's a pain and they fall while you're trying to clamp. And I just figured I could make something to help distribute the load. And really what I'm thinking about is I want a piece of wood to go across it, but I don't want to drill or glue onto these. I want to be able to remove them. These are antique clamps, and I think they're the best clamps ever made. And the last thing I want to do is anything that would be permanent, especially if I don't like my solution. So today I'm going to go through the process of coming up with a solution to this problem. So I've been thinking more about how I want to do this, and I got some pieces of wood, just scrap out of the bin. And what I'm thinking is I want to affix a pad, maybe a little bit bigger than this, on each of the jaws. And to affix it, instead of like gluing it or drilling it, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to make some little blocks to sandwich like that. And I will screw these in, and just the pressure will hold it in place because it doesn't need to be super strong in place. And that way I can just unscrew it and take them off if I ever need it for a specific glue up or just to not damage these clamps. I've thought about this some more and I realized two things. One, I want to do a groove in this pad so that it fits on the jaw and doesn't want to twist so much. And two, that my clamp probably needs some shape to it so that it doesn't hit this column. And I've actually done a mock-up here just out of some scrap oak with the dado groove here. So it should, slide right into place. And then this is what I came up with for the cleat. So at first, this was a 90-degree angle and it hit this column. So I just cut it so that it would be more vertical when at an angle. So that's essentially what it looks like. So I'm going to use this more or less as a template. I'm going to change it a little based off what I've learned, and we're going to mass produce that now. So I've got this really nice piece of sapele wood that I think is going to work perfect for our clamp pads. It's rough right now. I'm going to go over to the table saw and we're going to rip it down to size. And then I think based on how long it is, I'm just going to divide that by 10. Actually, I'm probably going to divide it by 11 to give me an extra pad because I'm going to make a mistake. That's what happens when you have no plan. And then whatever that is, I'm going to run over to the miter saw and cut it that size, and that'll be our pads. So let's get that done. So now I've got my major pieces cut. I've got my 10 bar portion of the pad, and then I've got this long strip for the cleats. I'm going to continue to just model my new pad off of the original one. I've made a few slight changes. As you can see, they're an inch shorter. That's simply because I only had enough material without having to cut another board for this length. Also, I made it a little bit taller to fit the pad of the clamp better. So like I said, I'm going to keep going. I really have two more portions. I have this divot to cut out using the dado blade, and I have these cleats to make. So I'm going to go with the cleats next. And as you see, there's some angles here. It's not perfectly 90. And when I was designing this, it's because I wanted the cleat to sit at an angle, but still allow for the clamp to be vertically in it. And so I cut that slight angle more than 90, And I'm really going to just model the same thing now. I did this by trial and error the first time, and I would do again if I hadn't already made it. But this time I'm just going to line it up here, and I am going to trace out the outline, and I'm going to go cut it out on the bandsaw. Okay, so I cut this out on the bandsaw, and I decided I think there's a better way to do it. First off, I really need to drill the holes first, because now that I've got it cut out, it's going to be nearly impossible to drill them vertically. It'll just be easier if I drill the holes first. Second, this angle, I think I can just do that super quick and super easy on the miter saw. So I'm going to take that approach first. Let's do some repetitive cuts on the miter saw, then drill, then bandsaw, and see how that goes. If you're enjoying this content so far, I'd really appreciate a subscription, a comment, a like, any of them. They help me out tremendously, and it'll keep this content going. So let's get back to what we're working on. So now it's time to go ahead and mark all of these. And I'm going to show you the trick I like to use. So I'm going to do my holes at 1 inch and 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to mark 1 inch and 1/2 inch with my tape. And now I've got this cheap beat up square from Harbor Freight. You can see there's a lot of grooves in it, because what I do is I then take this, and I know my block is 1.5 inches deep. So half of that is 3/4. I'm going to line up my measure on the mark I made. And then right here at 3/4, I'm going to make my hole. So what I like to do is I kind of rock it upright and then press, and you can see it's nice in line with the mark I made. So we're going to do it again. And I find that a nice, easy way to make repeated marks one after the next. So I'm going to go ahead and do that with my hole stack here. Okay, so now it's time to drill the holes for these things. And I'm going to use 2 bits here. First, I'm going to use a Forstner bit, and then I'm going to use a normal spiral drill bit. I'm going to use the Forstner bit first because it has this little bump in the middle. I don't know if you can see that on the camera. And that needs to go to center it. Otherwise, it's going to walk around. So I'm going to use the Forstner bit first. And then after that, I'm going to use the spiral drill bit. And I'm going to show you how to set up your drill press to make repeated holes the exact same depth. Okay, so as promised, we're going to go with the setup here. On my drill press, you've got a lever over here that I can adjust the height. I think we're actually at about the right height. And I'm going to put in my drill bit. So I'm going to open the chuck, center this, and then tighten it with the chuck key. And then always remove the chuck key. My grandfather drilled that into my head pretty thoroughly. I am gonna get this a little closer just so I have a shorter stroke on the drill press. And then we're gonna set the height. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to bring it down to about the height I desired. This is not an accuracy issue on this one. I'm just guessing I want it sunk about that much. And then I'm gonna adjust these screws on the side here all the way down so that it stops the drill press at the exact same point every time. So let's give that a go and see what this looks like. So we're going to start it up. I'm going to center it. And there you go. We got 2 equal depth, nice and centered holes. We're going to do that for the rest of them, and then we're going to go the spiral bit. So now I've got all of these holes cut, and they look great. We're going to remove this Forstner bit and go with this spiral bit, but I wanted to go ahead and show you that the reason I did that first is because now we're still retaining that center hole, and I can use it with this spiral bit, whereas if I had done the spiral bit first, that center hole wouldn't really be there, and the Forstner bit would not have a place to start. Now I have each of my cleats cut out and the holes drilled. I'm going to trace the pattern on each one and then cut them out on the bandsaw. So we've got most of the work done now. I've got my cleats ready, I've got my pads. The thing I need to do now is make the cut in my pads that will match each one of these faces of the clamp. And the reason that's kind of a problem is because I went ahead and I took my dial calipers and I measured each one, and they're off by a reasonable amount. And I think this is just because this is a collection I've surmounted over the years, made over how many decades, I don't know. These things were in production forever. But I'm basically gonna have to cut each groove for each face of each clamp. So let's get to that. It's gonna take a bit. Okay, so now it's time to cut our dado, and for that we're gonna need a sacrificial fence. If we don't put a fence behind the dado, when we go through, it'll just tear out the wood. That's for two reasons. One, dado blades are not that sharp. They're very terry. There's not a lot of teeth, I should say. They're actually very sharp. And two, this is very hard wood, prone to tearing. So we are gonna put a sacrificial fence on our miter gauge here. And I wanna show you my trick to doing this easy, because if you take the time to like do the screws and everything, it just takes so much time. So what I have found is that you can actually glue it, but first I'm gonna put painter's tape over my entire fence. You don't have to take a lot of care to do this, but I really try and press it down. And what we're gonna do is, on top of the painter's tape, we are then going to put our super glue. And the painter's tape may not be a super strong adhesive, but the distributed load over the whole thing will actually make a very strong bond. And I'm gonna put the glue on the fence on these ridges, and I'm only gonna do it on the center because I don't want it to squirt out and get on the untaped section. So it doesn't need to be a ton, and I'm not making a great trail here, but I'm gonna do 2 of them. And then once we've done this, I'm actually going to use the accelerant. So I'm gonna wipe my glue so I can use it again and put that up. And then there's like an instant set accelerant that I'm gonna use. Oop, and I lost my cap. Okay, and I'm gonna spray this on my piece. So I've done this once before, that's why it looks like that. So I'm gonna spray that there, and I'm gonna put it out a little further so we don't use the same groove that was there previously. Now I'm just gonna hold this on for a second, kind of squidge it around a little bit. Okay, and that's already set. Now, the reason I like doing this is because you saw that was like a minute and a half. I didn't have to drill holes. I didn't have to countersink to get it flush. This will work perfect, and it's actually really secure. And then when it's time to take it off, all I have to do is kind of rip it off. It'll rip some of the tape, but it's painter's tape. It leaves no damage at all to the miter gauge. And then I can just throw this away, having wasted no time countersinking it or anything. Okay, and now we've got our final pad here. I dadoed the center, that way it can fit on our clamp, and I've drilled these little pilot holes. All I did to do that was take the cleat we had made, hold it in place, and drill the holes through. So now we just have final assembly. I just want to give you one more nice little shot of what we come up with. So this is really simple. We've got a 7-inch piece of wood here to distribute the pressure. We've got these 2 little cleats and a groove for the pad to go in. And now this just slips right on, and we'll tighten these down, and that'll be that. So now we're ready for our final test. I'm really happy with the pads. They turned out great. I've got my mock glue up here. We're gonna see how they actually work. Now let's crank it down. Straight away, I can tell I like these things. They're giving the clamp support, so when I crank it, it doesn't want to flip. And yeah, look at that. That's fantastic. So much pressure that, yeah, it's holding together nicely, and I'm not worried about deforming it because I'm applying the pressure over the entire surface. So this is really great. I'm really happy with the way these turned out, and honestly, I think this is going to save me a lot of time. Thank you guys for following along on this journey today. I think our project turned out great. I think they look really good, and I think they work really good. I appreciate you guys watching. I also appreciate if you help contribute to the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. They all help me out. I'm Matt, and until next time, keep it mostly level.